From the heart of Central Florida, you're listening to the most electrifying show in media, A Neighbor's Choice. And I'm your host, your neighbor, David Gronowski. So glad to be with you again across our beautiful state. If you're listening on FM and AM, you know we're headquartered in the Sunshine State on our affiliates. Also on our video stream. We welcome you if you're listening there or watching there, or our podcast. We're always glad to see it growing all over this globe. I mean, the audience numbers around the world is just phenomenal, and we love hearing from our international fans. Places like Sweden and Finland and China and Japan, Indonesia, wherever you're listening, we're always grateful for your time and taking this time to spend this time with us to learn together about the news. We love having that opportunity to think deeper together, and to look for things that are positive, right? So much of the news is so negative. You don't feel built up. You don't feel inspired to greatness. And we want to encourage excellence and virtue, not just excellence as measured by crowd size or how much money you have or how much power you have, how many elections you win, how fashionable your ideas are. Those are not power. That's not great. That's not real excellence. That's just fashion. No one cares. It's as flimsy and fragile and meaningless as any kind of, blowing in the wind object. It's just not really something to take much stock in. What matters, of course, is things of virtue, role models that we can promote, because so much of our life is governed by role models. It's one of the reasons why I want folks to let go of our addiction to politics, because if politicians are lying and hiding their narcissism behind clean speech and hiding their bailouts for the banks and their swindling of the taxpayer and their regulatory capture of our markets and our jobs and their never-ending wars and their mass incarceration, if they're hiding it with good rhetoric, well, that's nobody to want to imitate. That's why the media tries to tell you, oh, Kamala Harris is a great role model. No, she's a terrible role model for young women. Young girls should not emulate Kamala Harris. That is a bad role model to look towards. A person who spends her life locking people up and throwing away exonerating evidence to get power for nonviolent choices? How would you want to emulate that? Who in good conscience thinks that's someone, I want to emulate a crooked politician like that? So we don't accept the little cookie cutter Mickey Mouse narratives that the old media tries to provide and force down our minds. We see right through them. And we see right through them because their grip is totally lost. And so their desperation reveals itself. And it repulses us the more they desire their power. We want things that don't have to try so hard. We want things that have a little bit of, you gotta pursue. And the media is so nanny state. It's so try hard. It's so, oh, please, you can't tweet this. Oh my goodness. Where were they when Barack Obama and Biden were saying we need to go mess up Libya? Why don't they censor that tweet? When Biden is promising to start up a conflict in Syria, why don't they censor that tweet? Because they don't care about the truth. They care about power. They care about fashion. They care about feeling like they have something over people. So these are not role models that we should elevate and look to. The role models we need to look to are ones that stand the test of time and ones that have skin in the game, meaning they don't send their other people's kids off to war and do nothing. They actually, take a bullet for their neighbor, or they don't actually incarcerate everybody in nonviolent crimes and throw away the key for decades. They actually spend time with those who are thrown away in prison. Or maybe the folks that we need to emulate are people who are busy doing quiet acts of self-sacrifice, not seeking attention. Maybe we need to look closer to our neighborhoods, to our homes, and cultivate role models we can all emulate. But all of this comes back to my previous point in the hour before this episode, which is we have to unify people. We have to bring people to peace. We have to bring people away from never-ending obsession with beating the other. When you're innovating, you don't care about actually just copying what everybody else is doing in your competition. You care about actually doing something that's never been done before. And that's the kind of encouragement I want to promote in this culture. So how does Jesus help us understand this? When you say the word Jesus, a lot of people get scared. They say, oh my goodness, now it's going to be religious. No. As I've shown before on this program, if you've been watching or listening, you know that you can't separate from the religion. Religion is steeped in everything. The state is religious. Its ideologies like Marxism and Keynesianism and neocon and all these things are religious. They're a type of religious binding agency. Religion means in the Latin to bind together. So when we talk about religion, we're talking about what binds us together. So it's a culture. It's in the ancient world, or not even the ancient world, just even a few hundred years ago, there was no word for religion. Religion and culture were one and the same. It's only in the Christian world where people started to say, okay, let's put a separate category for religious affairs, and then we'll have a civic realm so that we can kind of keep things divided, which, is a false dichotomy, really, because we still have very deeply religious ideologies that are governing and moving and shaping people's hearts and aspirations all around us. And most people don't think much about these things, right? And so this is a program for folks who want to think about these things because they want to be the role models that lead the people who don't want to think or don't want to know how to think, and they don't have time to think or whatever. You have to be a role model for those people. So this is why you listen to this program, so you can have that kind of secret weapon in your back pocket to help cut through the noise and confusion in this wild world. So we have to have role models. And I think who better than the person who split time to be a role model we look to? People read books. They read biographies of Steve Jobs, because he created the iPod and the iPhone, and he created Pixar. And people say, if I can learn from his magic, if I can learn something from his life, maybe there's some bad, maybe there's some good, but if I can learn, by role modeling whatever he's doing, maybe I'll be great in my own business or my own idea, my own talent. And I would say, how much more so, if that's true, should we reject the fashionistas and want to study the life of Jesus, whether we're religious or not? Because far from an iPhone and Pixar, Jesus, is how we count our time in the year 2020 AD. He created hospitals, created inspirations for empires, the greatest works of art, the greatest scientists. So much of what we take for granted today as our inheritance from past centuries was inspired and developed precisely because of being inspired by the life of Jesus and wanting to exemplify the life and the truth of his witness of what's good and beautiful and true, right? And so we should, regardless of whether you're religious or not, take heed and listen and really contemplate what we can learn from the life of Jesus and use that narrative of his life to shape how we navigate our times of turmoil today. Let me do a spoiler alert about his life. Jesus is killed at a young age, brutally killed. He is charged with nonviolent crimes, charged with helping. He's been accused of teaching people to not pay taxes and blaspheming God himself. So he has both religious accusations and political accusations, which are really, as I said before, kind of one and the same. And it doesn't end well for him in our perspective of what a winner is and what a loser is, and who we look up to for our political inspiration and so forth. In fact, it looks really bad. Jesus talks about helping the poor, helping the sick, right? And liberating, setting the captives free. And when Jesus dies at a young age, the next day, there were still people unjustly captive in Jesus' hometown. He didn't set all the captives free in terms of there wasn't an abolition of the dungeon system that they were under. There wasn't an abolition of the occupation that was harming people in the middle and lower classes of his culture. There was a lot of corruption still going on years after he died, right? Of course, we Christians believe that he resurrected physically, historically, in time, in history. But in terms of that was not a public event, that was something he revealed to those, right? One-on-one and in a crowd of followers. It was not something that was, publicly acknowledged from direct eyewitnesses of Pontius Pilate and Caesar or what have you, right? So from the public narrative, Jesus dies, and after his death, are all the captives free? Are people still occupied? Yes, they're still occupied. Are people all set free? No. Are people still sick? Is leprosy still going on? Yes, right? So when we think about what role models we want to imitate as we create the kind of unity that we want and the kind of prosperity that we all want for our families and our kids and grandkids, we have to think about Jesus' track record. Again, I'm saying he's the best role model. He's the greatest man who ever lived at the very least. Putting aside the religious element of this conversation for a moment, for my friends who are more secular or whatever, that word secular comes from Christianity as well, of course. Religious concept too. But Jesus was also, someone who, when he died, he said he's come to set the captives free, and yet captives still exist. And people still had leprosy and didn't have a healing after he died. Yet today, we, in our politicized world, we think the politicians got to stop all the wars. They've got to stop murder. They got to stop climate change. They got to stop the sick from the poor from having a hard time with sickness. They've got to stop a virus. They've got to shut down the world economy and kill millions of people in the third world because of the political interventions for this virus. They are taught to believe that human beings in 2020 and 1960 and 1870 or whatever, that human beings that you elect through popularity contests that are actually mediated by a strong wall of oligarchic interests, that they can do things that Jesus didn't apparently promise to do. Because if Jesus intended a total absolution of all prisoners and captives and everybody would be healed when his mission was done, when he died, then by the standards of the world, it doesn't look so good. But as we know, our imagination, our aesthetic, and our ethics, everything that has shaped the Western world and the globe because of the Western world's global imprint around the world, is moving in the direction that Jesus foresaw and that he implemented. So if you think of Jesus as a grand strategist who doesn't force his solutions in a immediate fashion, but rather sets in place the motion and the energy and the ideas and the role model of his life and those who would imitate him after, he sets in motion a change of events which as a grand strategist of history are still going according to his plan and his vision over 2,000 years after he came onto the scene. So if we study his life, which we're going to do in this next segment and beyond, we'll start to understand exactly the rule, the guide, the role model that Jesus provides for all of us to emulate in our daily lives and in our social society. So we'll be back with just this in a second. David Gronowski here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals, join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER.
Here's one thing you can scratch off your to-do list without going anywhere, without any out-of-pocket cost to you, and even get up to $150 cash back. Get that crack in your windshield fixed by calling Auto Glass America. They'll come to you, and with comprehensive insurance coverage, there's no cost to you. Call Auto Glass America now and fix that pane in the glass with premium glass and a lifetime warranty. Call 813-96-GLASS, 813-96-GLASS. Auto Glass America.
Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck on a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187, Equal Housing Lender. Hello, this is David Gronowski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a sixth-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR. So we're talking about how to imitate Jesus and why it's important to do so. And again, it's kind of counterintuitive because you're told in this so-called post-Christian world that we have escaped religion. That's false. We're deeply entrenched in religion, but now it looks like ideology. It looks like fashions. It looks like things that we desire in pop culture. It looks like role models that we worship, adore that the media foists upon us. But all those things are falling apart. Hollywood looks so small this year in many ways, so irrelevant. The media looks so weak. I mean, they gaslit people for 4 years telling us that this guy, Trump, was the worst thing ever, and he got a record turnout and largest non-white vote. So it showed that their attempt to try to divide people racially just fell on its face. Of course, they've still got true believers who are a little bit more gullible, a little bit more low info in their facts. But we can see that if you got 72 million or 73 million people voting for Trump, and 100 million people saying, I don't care, I'm not voting for any of this thing, it's a joke, the vast majority of people are headed in the right direction to various degrees. They're rejecting the institutional gatekeepers. They're rejecting the oligarchic consensus. The media doesn't have monopoly control. People are learning about the truth about the failure of the food pyramid system. They're learning the truth about the failure of the fake green energy industry. They're learning movies like Planet of the Humans, but Michael Moore produced and has fascinating information that exposes the lies of the fake green energy industry. And so people are waking up. They're learning about true nutrition. They're learning about true clean energy. They're learning the truth about thinking about physics in a more wise and intelligent way. They're learning the truth slowly but surely in various fields that will all come together in a glorious harmony. That doesn't mean we sit on autopilot and just say, okay, well, everything's good. No, it is a struggle of free will. It's a struggle of volition and proper role modeling. And so here, who is better but Jesus to look for guidance as we want to build the leadership we need? And so you might be listening right now and say, I don't understand this stuff, or I don't understand, this is too deep for people. No, it's very simple. It's very intuitive. We want role models. Everybody does. You don't exist without role models. Your identity, yourself, is a construct of various role models who shaped your life. Whether you recognize them or give them credit, they have. And they've got their hooks in you, so to speak. Their example, for good or ill, have their examples have their hooks in you, and they're pulling you in their scripts. They're pulling you in their stories as you live out your own story. Karl Marx, I heard, had nasty sores like carbuncles or something just oozing out of his body. And the article was suggesting perhaps these horrible, terrible, painful sores autobiographically shaped the vicious, violent ideology he ended up unleashing. Try as he might to try to just make it scientific, there was enough envy and resentment that was oozing through his pen that ended up creating the kind of violent outcomes for those who imitated his role model through his voice and history. So role models come in various shapes and sizes. They come in various frameworks, but we're going to worship somebody. We're going to imitate. We're going to be in adoration to someone or something. Maybe we're in adoration of money. Maybe we're in adoration of fashion, peer pressure, whatever it is. We are fully infected by the examples of those who've come before us and those who are with us now. So when we continue in just a second, I'm going to unpack exactly how we should look at Jesus' role model for unifying our country, unifying our neighbors, cutting across political divides, and living out a life with real meaning, real purpose, real hope. Not a unity based on sacrifice, but a unity based on forbearance, on mercy, on true confidence, which acts with mercy, not desperate attempts at power. We'll be back in just a moment, but you can email me, hello@aneighborschoice.com. That's hello@aneighborschoice.com.
Ronald Reagan would turn over in his grave if he saw what's going on today.
Crazy things are happening.
You cannot be afraid. You've got to stand up for what you believe is right.
But one thing is for sure.
You can't trust anybody.
For talk, news, and information, you can count on us.
Enough is enough. I mean, I almost blew a gasket.
Good for the country.
I know what I'm talking about. A lot of wackos out there.
Your connection to talk about it. The all-new News Talk 1040, WHBO.
President Trump says a COVID-19 vaccine will soon be available for everyone in the U.S., except with the exception of some places like New York.
This is a very successful, amazing vaccine at 90% and more. But so the Governor Cuomo, will have to let us know when he's ready for it. Otherwise, we can't be delivering it to a state that won't be giving it to its people immediately.
New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo says any vaccine which comes out of the Trump administration must first be validated by state health officials. The president also says one thing is certain.
This administration will not go, under any circumstances, will not go to a lockdown, but will be very vigilant, very careful.
That's even though COVID-19 cases are rising nationwide. ABC News is projecting that President-elect Biden will win Arizona and that Mr. Trump will win North Carolina. A hand recount of all the ballots cast by Georgia voters in the presidential election got underway today. Daria Albinger, ABC.
So how do we build unity? How do we imitate the life of Jesus in constructing a unity that's lasting, that's sustainable, that's a win-win for everybody? We don't want win-lose. That's what politics is. It promises someone's going to win, but somebody's got to lose for you to win. That if someone's rich or if someone's talented, it's got to be a conspiracy about their race or their gender or their cheating or they're in collusion with another government. There's always got to be something that you can disparage and try to make someone take down a notch so you can get a point up. That's win-lose. That's zero sum. That's what politics is all about. What we have to cultivate is win-win. Win-win. And that's what you get with imitating someone like Jesus. Whether you're religious or not, you get win-win solutions. But the win-win doesn't always look exactly like the kind of wins that we're used to. It doesn't result in the kind of power or domination that we think is what winning looks like. In Jesus' time, there's a story here I wanted to talk about. And it's in Matthew chapter 20. We'll start with verse 20. Then the mother of Zebedee's sons came to Jesus with her sons and knelt down to make a request of him. "What do you want?" he inquired. She answered, "Declare that in your kingdom one of these two sons of mine may sit at your right hand and the other at your left." Jesus said, "You do not know what you are asking. Can you drink the cup I am going to drink?" "We can," the brothers answered. "You will indeed drink my cup," Jesus said, "but to sit at, so you will be in my shoes, in other words. You're going to be in my spot. But to sit at my right or left is not mine to grant. These seats belong to those for whom my Father has prepared them." When the 10 heard about this, they were indignant with the two brothers. But Jesus called them aside and said, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their superiors exercise authority over them. It shall not be this way among you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first among you must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many." So they want power. They want political power. They're still imagining that to succeed is to do the same thing that we are told to do by media, which is to vote and to hire people and take power. And once you win a popularity contest with dubious credibility, then you can inflict your way over the losers. Winner takes all the power, stack your administrations. Of course, we know that there is a entrenched bureaucracy that wants war and climate change policy and all the subsidies and handouts for corporations and banks and mass incarceration for little people. And they're in there whether you elect somebody or not. But their narrative is those who tell us that we have to worship the government, those who are in the old media, they tell us, hey, if you want power, if you want to win, you want to succeed, you got to go for the power. You got to go for the throne. And if you can't sit on the throne yourself, you can be on the winning team and they will exercise dominion for you. And that word dominion is important because that word lord it over in that passage means to exercise dominion over. So when you see there, it says, when Jesus says, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, they exercise dominion over their people, and their superiors exercise authority over them. It shall not be this way among you. Meaning, if you're going to imitate my way of doing things, if you're going to imitate my leadership, you're not going to be seeking the throne. You're not going to be trying to exercise dominion over people with a might makes right mentality, right? That's why he says you don't know what you're asking when they're saying, hey, come sit on my right hand and left hand, because who was sitting on his right hand and left hand when he came into his throne? People who were being crucified. People who were treated the worst, treated like scum. That was at his right hand and his left hand when he came upon his victory in what he imagined. So when he says drink, when he said, can you drink the cup I'm going to drink? Can you actually walk a mile in the shoes that I'm going to walk with a cross on my back, whipped 66 times with a cat of nine tails, with a thorny crown pressing into your head with massive blood loss, and then crucified so that you're suffocating under your own weight with nails and major artery sectors of your body. Left in humiliation. For what? Accused of nonviolent crimes, no basis for any guilt. Tortured out of envy. Tortured out of blind hate. That's what Jesus had in mind when he talked about being in your kingdom, being in his kingdom. We have kingdoms all around us. In the time of Herod, who presided over the torture of Jesus, that was considered a king or a person who has a kingdom. Inside of a kingdom are people that imitate your influence. So today, we don't think of that the accurate way, because if you think about it accurately, we have kingdoms all over the place, not just governments. We have people like, think about Jay-Z. Millions of people are influenced by him for year after year after year, in his role model of how he acts and how he treats other people and the kind of things that he communicates in his stories. And he influences millions of people. So he has his own kingdom. Karl Marx, in some sense, had his own kingdom, a vicarious kingdom of people who imitated his autobiographical, carbuncle situation and whatever else he had. I know he had some other problems, but these things manifested in hate and anger and maybe some good ideas too, because people are not black or white, you don't demonize people, even though the old media wants us to do that to a lot of people. But ultimately, Karl Marx had his own little kingdom that produced results. It produced, over 100 million people dying of horrible situations? Johnny Cash had a kingdom, right? Mark Cuban has a kingdom. Madonna has a kingdom. The owners of NBC have a kingdom. They have people that work for them or are influenced by their role model and the values and the examples they give, and they imitate and they become a little bit more like them through osmosis, through subconsciously desiring what they are desiring. So when Jesus talks about, when they're talking about coming into his kingdom, what they're ultimately talking about is when you get your way, when you succeed in accomplishing your life role model that we're all going to be a part of, your movement, your goals, your vision, we want to be your right-hand people and your left-hand people. And Jesus is saying, if you're going to drink my cup, the cup I'm going to drink, he's he's giving you a taste, a little wink at what's to come, which is you don't want to be at his right hand or his left hand because that's not exactly what you think. You want to win an election. You want to have power. You want to push in your border wall. You want to push in your healthcare policy that will cover pre-existing conditions. You want to put in a tax policy that will tax all the right people the right amount. You want to go to the right wars. You want to make the right deals. You want to have the right foreign aid. You want to have the right subsidies administered. Or maybe you're a radical libertarian. You want to downsize it all because you won't have any desire for power once you have that kind of ultimate power to downsize things, right? Whatever it is, there's this idea that if you exercise dominion by forcing your way and accomplishing it through force or top-down solutions, because even if you're a libertarian and you're president, you're still exerting a will over an American people that obviously are not going to be persuaded anytime soon to dramatically abolish these government agencies that many libertarians want to abolish. So if by some amazing fluke you're able to get in office, you're still going to be exercising your will over people by saying we're going to dramatically abolish and fire off all these staff people, right? So to look at things politically as a superficial level. You need to look at things culturally. You have to change people's appetite for collective violence before you go and try to win an election and try to abolish things from a top-down level. I understand the sentiment, and there's a noble idea behind it, but ultimately you have to change people's role models. You have to change people's cultural appetites for violence. Otherwise, you can have a radical revolutionary change in government and still violence continues. Just ask Robespierre, right? These people who have come before us who get cannibalized by their own fervor and righteous indignation against power and violence that they are under. Look at the story in Mark 10:42. Start with 41. When 10 heard about this, they became indignant with James and John. These are the brothers that wanted to sit at his right and left hand. So Jesus called them together and said, you know that those regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their superiors exercise authority over them. But it shall not be this way among you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. So he's inviting us to stop coveting power. He's inviting us, if you want to imitate his life, forget about all the metaphysical questions that worry you and bother you and cloud your mind. If you want to imitate Jesus, if you want to be like Jesus in your life, he's saying it's going to look upside down from what you expect. It's going to look upside down from what you have come to expect from everybody else's kingdoms around you. Every think tank, every pop culture, every megastar preacher, everything you imagine is what success looks like. It's going to look upside down when you actually imitate the master of history himself. And that's so puzzling for people, we gloss over it and say, next passage, please. I can't handle it. Because it's such a slap in the face of everything we've come to expect in our time. We've come to expect that the only way we can have power is to persuade enough people to think like us and then hire the right people who will implement our way over other people, winner takes all. And that is not the way that Jesus says people who imitate him act. So as democracy exposes itself as a lie, and as the media exposes itself as a lie, and as people grasp for power, and as they grasp for it desperately and they try too hard, people are revolted by it, you can look to the true master of history to see what to do instead. He does not tell his folks, oh, we'll have plenty of power once we win. You watch. I'll make you the czar of energy, and I'll make you the czar of healing, and we'll put it in by force, and don't worry, Herod, that old fox, he won't have any power. We'll defeat him, and we'll have our self-defense, and we'll have our army ready to take him on if he tries to sow discord or revolution. And don't you worry, we're going to take care of the poor by force. We're going to take care of the crooks by force. He doesn't offer that. And yet 2,000 years later, almost everything you're debating in politics and culture and society are totally infected by what Jesus did. So obviously he had some impact. Obviously he won something. He won something big that we don't even fully wrap our minds around. Kind of ahead of us. We barely keep up. He won something big because we're worried about the first and the last to this day. I tell people all the time, that story with Brett Kavanaugh, that whole story wouldn't have happened in the time of Jesus. If a person came up and accused a person of high rank in the Senate of Rome of something they did, trying to hurt them or assault them in college years, it wouldn't even matter about the lack of corroborating evidence. Just the mere fact that someone without power is leveling an accusation about that to a person in high rank in Roman power would be totally laughed off and probably harmed. Jesus dramatically changed history. He changed the environment, our sandbox by which we are able to shape good ideas and bad ideas. But the sandbox is Jesus. The sandbox of our reality that we're playing in, that we're molding ideas and failing and justifying our bad ideas and justifying our power lust, just like the brothers here in this passage, right? James and John, they're so eager to get on with Jesus's fresh, new, beautiful revolution, but they still want to take the shortcut to heaven that leads to hell. They still want to use power by force. They still want that dominion, but this time it'll be for the good guys. And the point of this story is for you to understand that it never is a good time. That exercising dominion never works out. There's never an exception for this story where exerting force is how you win the day, is how you change the lives of people around you, of how you unleash healing and mercy and justice. That's the whole point of this story. It's not for you to look at like in a museum piece and say, oh, isn't that neat how he did it? But I'm not going to imitate that or learn how that applies to my life and my politics and my disappointments and my longing for justice. No, that's the way it's actually real. It's real because you can imitate Jesus's life. And if you imitate his life, you see that the lessons that he's telling those brothers apply to us right now. You can't lord over. You cannot exert force. You cannot coerce people, even if you have the most wonderful ideas. Because what was James and John excited about? They were excited about Jesus' radical, loving message. How many people who vote for Biden or Trump or whatever, they think they're doing it because of love. But those ideas, they don't pan out. Look what they did. They voted for Donald Trump. And they couldn't even end the war. He couldn't even hire the right people to execute the ending of the war because human beings can't do it. It's not in their constitution to plan out everybody's life by force. It's not in our human ability to be able to exercise dominion and have our way over other people. That's what he's pointing out in this story. And we still miss it. We're still blinding ourselves to this obvious reality and being frustrated by the false song of politics that distracts us so much every day. I'm David Gornosky. We'll be back in just a moment. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice.
Politics these days are just that, politics. Pathetic discussions about things that don't matter, while the pandemic, crime, and economic disparity march on. That's why you need a balanced approach to news, business, and entertainment in the state of Florida. That publication is newstalkflorida.com. Whether it's the White House, the courthouse, or your neighbor's house, News Talk Florida has the sources, articles, video, and audio that will be a must daily check-in from your laptop or mobile device. Take a look at newstalkflorida.com. Today's news and entertainment with a Florida slant. that.
Hello, this is David Gronowski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a sixth-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to CataniaCatania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania Catania personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa.
Not attorney spokeswoman.
Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender. A neighbor's choice. So I'm talking about how we build unity the right way. We can't build unity the way the media wants. They want to exercise dominion over people. They want us to participate in trying to exercise dominion over our neighbor. And they do these elaborate rituals. We're supposed to vote, supposed to think a certain way, supposed to speak a certain way. We're told which is the good characters, which are the villains, all this stuff. But it's not going to work. It's all backfiring. So imitating this neoliberal, whatever you want to call it, I don't really care about the labels. You know, you come up with a million labels. It doesn't really mean much. They're just words. They're just symbols. But the reality is it's a mess. The status quo that the media in their groupthink blindness keep pushing us into, and the reality of the bureaucracies that are in power, no matter who we elect or don't elect. And so we have to look with fresh eyes to the master of history, the one who we count our time by, the one who inspired the creation of hospitals and created the only reason why we have these debates about how many people should we allow in through refugee programs is because of our sensitivity to victims. Now, that gets exploited. That sensitivity for victims comes from the influence of Jesus in his life that says God desires mercy, not sacrifice. If you want to be great, you have to be a servant, care for the least of these. If you've given to a prisoner and to a person who's naked, you've given to me, right? These things that we hear from, right? That we talk about in the discourse today, how many refugees are going to bring in? These are all in the sandbox that Jesus created. Whether you like these policies, whatever your opinion is, you are swimming in his fishbowl. You're playing in Jesus' sandbox. And his sandbox is not a religious dogma, okay? And so that's the mistake, is that the religious expressions of Jesus are good and helpful in many ways, but when you mistake their maps for the reality of Jesus, you can get lost, because sometimes they get you obsessed with thinking the proper ideas about Jesus rather than actually living out the reality of Jesus' life in your time. And the trust, what faith is trust. That's what it comes down to. When we talk about learning to have faith, what we're talking about is trusting that you can literally act like Jesus in your life and be okay. That you can face off even death and persecution and wrongful conviction and humiliation and abandonment by your friends and still triumph eternally. Not just in the metaphysical sense of an eternal life that's physically real, which the tradition teaches of Jesus' life, but also eternally in the sense that if you're so courageous and self-sacrifice, your story lives on, and the people who hear about it and are so moved in awe by the true power that you manifested and perfected in that act of supposed weakness by laying down your life for a friend, by refusing to reciprocate violence with violence. President Trump tweeted out 2 hours ago, now it is learned that the horrendous Dominion voting system was used in Arizona and big in Nevada. No wonder the result was a very close loss. This Dominion system, the media tells you nothing to see here. From what I've heard from Maria Bartiromo, I mean, is she totally not allowed to have an opinion or have any evidence? She apparently is saying some kind of connection to a Venezuelan company that was created this technology, the software that Dominion uses, was used with Chavez, and that it apparently the votes are sent to Spain on a server to count there. I mean, a lot of strange stuff there. And who is to know the real secrets of these untouchable sacred institutions like the Dominion voting software? And obviously Trump is violating a taboo by questioning something like that. His own administration bureaucrats are saying, hey, nothing to see here, nothing to see here. So who knows what's going on here? But one thing we do know is that Jesus rejects dominion in all of its forms. You do not exercise dominion the way everybody else's kingdoms are done. You imitate me, catch up with me. Jesus says if you want to be great, if you want to create solutions that help the poor, which we should, if you want to help people with pollution, if you want to cure diseases and illnesses, then if you want to be first in those things, you must be a slave. If you want to be great at helping the poor, you must first be a servant. Not a servant that uses force, not being a servant in your rhetoric, using rhetoric to say I'm there to save the world and make democracy spread around the world by force. That's exercising dominion, and it won't work. It's failing. And the sooner we realize the revolution that Jesus has launched in our history and in our life, the sooner we can get on to building a win-win world for everyone, all of our neighbors. I'm David Gronowski. Email me hello@aneighborschoice.com. Godspeed.